Hello and welcome to today's webinar, When the Unexpected Happens, Income Protection for Dentists, What You Need to Know in 2024. My name is Marilyn Cook, Marketing Engagement Manager for WDA Insurance and Services Corp. And our Benefits Manager, Christine Nadolski, is also here with me. So thank you for joining us. A little bit about us. Professional Insurance Programs is an independent agency whose focus is on providing customized insurance and risk management solutions to professionals. We can help you with all of your business and personal insurance needs. We are owned and operated by your professional association and serving the dental community for over 40 years. Professional Insurance Programs has teamed up with MGIS to bring you the ultimate disability income protection program, specially tailored for dental groups. Today, we will navigate the complex world of disability insurance, including what you should look for, how the WDA specialty program can work for you, additional features that are important to dentists, and the benefits of offering disability insurance to recruit and retain employees. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few items with you. You will receive a recording of this presentation emailed to you within 48 hours. Those attending this presentation live, I will be emailing your CE certificates to you. You will have them by the end of the day. And then you will have the opportunity to submit questions to our presenter by typing your questions into the control panel, and you can submit those questions at any time and we will answer them at the end. And then here is a picture of our control panel and how to submit questions. And in order to receive the CE credit, you must remain in attendance for the entire presentation. Your check-in is necessary to receive the CE credit. Your check-in will be done in the question panel. I am now going to ask you to check in by typing the word insurance in the question panel. Your unique link that you signed in with will give me your name and I will be able to track who's checking in. So I will give you a few minutes to do that. Okay, thank you. So I am going to have us get started. I would like to introduce our presenter, Andrew Gilmore, Vice President of Sales at the MGIS companies, along with our long-term partner, David Dorley. I am now going to turn this over to Andrew.
Hey, thank you so much, Marilyn. I'm just pulling out my presentation. Can you see that okay, Marilyn?
Yep, we're all good.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks so much for the opportunity to speak to all your members at the Wisconsin Dental Association. My name again is Andrew Gilmore. I am the Great Lakes Regional Vice President of Sales for MGIS, and today's presentation is all about disability insurance and what to look for. And I think today, why Marilyn and Mara, Christine, and Wendy over at the WDA wanted me to talk to you today about disability insurance is, yes, I work for MGIS, and I'm going to tell you exactly what MGIS does and how it specializes in group disability insurance for dentists. But I just want to tell you a little bit about myself personally. I've been in the insurance industry for over 20 years, and I've been all across the insurance industry, both involved in individual disability insurance as well as group benefits and group LTD. And why that's so important is my entire career, I've worked with dentists and medical doctors. You guys are the number one purchasers of disability insurance in the industry. And in fact, if you look at the individual DI industry, you guys purchase anywhere from 40 to 50% of all the disability insurance that's sold in a particular year. And it's for a good reason. Your occupation requires you to have to insure your income based off of all the hands-on duties that you do. So as you're making those decisions, it's really important to know what features to look for. The other thing that's so important is this: professional insurance programs and the WDA are super unique in how they are set up. In my experience, whether when I was on the individual side of the business or I was on the employee benefit side of the business, when dentists when dentists go out and try to buy disability insurance, they oftentimes have to go to multiple different people in order to achieve that. Like they'll buy their individual insurance from maybe their financial advisor or their life insurance agent, but then they have to seek out an employee benefits person for their group insurance. Well, what's so unique about the WDA and professional insurance programs is everything is housed under them. They can sell you the right type of individual disability insurance. They can also sell you through MGIS the right type of group LTD. So they're your one-stop shop. It's so unique in the marketplace, and you should take advantage of their expertise. So I just thought I would start by talking about that. Today's agenda is pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to go over why dentists need disability insurance, but you can't get it through one program. You have to use multiple programs, and professional insurance programs is here to help you with that. We're going to talk about why your duties lead to claims and why you have to have the best contract, because at the end of the day, the definition of disability is what's going to drive whether or not an insurance carrier is going to pay a claim. So I'm going to give you some hints on what to look for in your disability contract and what the WDA offers you to make sure that you have the right claims outcomes. Other features, like the definition of disability is the most important feature, but there's other features for you to be interested in, like partial disability, business overhead expense, and the WDA has you covered there. So we're going to talk about some of these other features as well. I'm going to talk about my company, MGIS. There's a reason why the WDA, came to MGIS and said, let's set up a special program for you, the members of the WDA. And it's a specialized program that you can only get through the WDA. So I'll talk a little bit about our block of business in a minute, but I want to emphasize that professional insurance programs in the WDA offer you, the member of the Wisconsin Dental Association, something special that no other dentist who's not let's say you're a dentist but not a member, you can't access this. So it's a specialized program. So I'll go over what makes us different. I'm going to talk about go into a little bit more detail on the definition of disability and why our CDT code claims adjudication is so important, because it leads to great claims outcomes for you. And then, I think let's talk about the elephant in the room. Right now in the industry, there's a major recruiting and retention crunch. And I'm probably speaking to a lot of small business owners out there where you own your own practice and you're competing against some of the large dental houses, who can offer employee benefits to their staff. So you're recruiting against some tough cookies. And so how can you use the WDA's program through MDIS to recruit those dental hygienists, dental assistants, and office staff? Because it's a quality employee benefits program is going to lead to hiring good people. And then obviously we're going to talk about next steps. So how do you if you're interested in what the WDA and professional insurance programs is offering, who do you have to contact? And so we'll get into that as well. So I want to start off with our value proposition right up front. Why the WDA? Why MGIS? If you talk to a financial advisor worth their salt, they will tell every dentist that they need to insure 70% of their income. And the reasoning behind that is, when you look at claim statistics, dentists are far more likely to go out on a disability claim, which is an accident or illness, than the typical white collar occupation. And we'll go into why that is, but I mean, it. I mean, I imagine if you've been in the industry a long time, you have a colleague who's been disabled. So we want to make sure to insure as much income as you can possibly do. And so 70% is usually the rule of thumb. The problem with that is dentists are used to just only buying individual disability insurance. And why that's a problem is it's tough underwriting. And unfortunately, in the last 10 to 15 years, the individual carriers significantly limit how much dentists can buy. So you have to go to multiple sources. And so, as I said at the top of the hour, the WDA and the Professional Insurance Programs Organization have you covered. They have access to the best individual DI through Dave Dorley and through Jake, as well as the MGIS program, which we'll talk about, and By combining those two, you can actually get up to 70% of your income replaced. And then additionally, through our program, we have higher GI limits, and I'll share an example with you. And then preferred pricing. Okay, we call it discounts, but really it's preferred pricing. It's stuff that you can only get going through Wendy and Christine. So really want to emphasize that. And then again, we have other benefits. So it's not just long-term disability, but like other benefits like short-term disability and life insurance. Who is MGIS? Well, I think it's important for you to know the carrier that WDA has partnered with. So MGIS stands for Medical Group Insurance Services. And so we're on the group benefits side. But why it's so important to emphasize our name, Medical Group Insurance Services, is there's like 40 to 50 different group carriers that you could get access to through an employee benefits broker. But there's only one that works exclusively with doctor groups and dental groups. And that's MGIS. And we've actually been around since the 1960s. And what's different about us is we're a program manager. So instead of being, the full insurance carrier, we basically create products and we do account management, and then we team up with insurance carriers. Right now, our insurance carrier is Reliance Matrix, which is an A+ rated AM Best carrier. And so you really essentially get the best of both worlds. You get MGIS who are experts in your industry and know the features that you really need in an LTD contract, an STD contract, and a life contract. But then we team up with an insurance carrier that's A+ rated so that you know that your claims are going to get paid. Because like if you have a strong contract, you need the reserves to back that up. So it's really a best of both worlds service model. And we're going to get into the contract, which our LTD contract is actually like our core product. And what we do is something very, very unique. We take the key provisions of individual DI that you know you need to have. We take those key provisions and we put it into a group contract. So it's guarantee issue. So it's a guarantee issue program, no medical underwriting, and it stacks on top of your individual DI. So at the end of the day, you can utilize the WDA, their individual product offerings, and then MGIS to get the right type of coverage, the stuff that actually covers you, and the right amount of coverage, because you can stack it on top of each other and actually get to 70% replacement. So because of what we do, like offering the right provisions to dentists and doctors and being able to stack on top of your individual DI so you can get up to 60 to 70% replacement, MGIS is number one in your industry. We have well over 20% market share, which there's numerous carriers out there that will offer to you. So, but when dentists see what we do, you often pick us. So just want to emphasize that. So who do you contact? Well, I'll flash this at the end of the presentation as well, but your contacts are Wendy Block and Christine Nadolski. They're the experts over at the WDA. I hope at the end of this presentation that you'll be interested in seeking a quote for Group LTD, STD, or Life, through the specialized program. So please contact Wendy or Christine if you're interested. So let's talk a little bit about why, and you know this, why do dentists and doctors, really need the best disability insurance programs out there? Well, I always think about it like it's really two-pronged. Dentists and doctors don't start making income well into their 30s. It's a lot different than like, my brother was, a Wall Street executive. He as soon as he graduated from undergraduate school, he's making hundreds of thousands of dollars. Dentists are not like that. You have 4 years of undergrad where you're going through, probably a STEM field. Then you have 4 years of dental school. You might go in and do a residency or a fellowship, depending upon what type of specialty you do. And then it's going to take you a few years to really either work at a practice or get your practice going before you really start making income. So you're behind the 8 ball. You've developed a lot of debt. Additionally, dentists are not like accountants or lawyers sitting behind a desk, passing papers. You guys are very hands-on. You have manual dexterity tied to your job. And really, if you think about it, your job description in terms of the physicality of it line up more with a blue collar person than they do with a white collar person. You're using your hands, you're up on your feet, you're using your legs. And then the biggest thing that we see is you're bending over, you're twisting, using your back and spine. And so what we see in the disability world is when it comes to claims for dentists and doctors, 45% of the claims are musculoskeletal related claims. These are back issues, arthritis, stuff like that. And so it's something that other white collar professions don't really have to deal with at nearly the level. Additionally, your industry has really, really changed and evolved. And through that evolution and all the stuff that's put on dentists, we see high stress, high burnout, and substance abuse claims. Okay. And it's unlike any other industry. I mean, you guys are high stress. And so again, you need a disability product that will cover you for that stuff. What contributes to that high stress? It's the number of hours you work a week. I mean, it's very common for dentists to work 50 plus hours a week. It's very stressful. Additionally, we see dentists working well into their 70s. It's not like it was before. People continue to work well past Social Security retirement age. Additionally, I've seen all different types of organizations and how they're set up financially, whether you're a partner in a practice and you have, an S corp, so you're paying yourself a W-2 as well as dividend income. You want to make sure to have a disability program that covers all of your earnings. There's many group carriers out there that only cover W-2, and so you need to make sure it's covering all your earnings. Wendy, Christine, myself, and Dave will make sure to do a contract audit for you to make sure that if you do have a plan in place, that it is covering all your earnings. And then additionally, you're constantly evolving your profession. New procedures and specialties are popping up within dentistry all the time. You need a disability contract that keeps up with that constantly evolving occupation of yours. So you need a disability program that covers that. So what do you look for? Well, we talked about it at the top. The number one thing that you guys look for is individual DI. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One reason is individual DI is the gold standard of disability contracts. It covers you for what you do. If you get disabled, a claims examiner is not going to force you into some other occupation. There's no weird provisions in it that try to, get you off a claim. It's really the gold standard, as well as if you want to work in another occupation, typically you buy a plan that's what's called true own occupation. So there's no offsets if you decide, hey, I want to go sell real estate or I want to go work for a pharmaceutical company. It really is the gold standard. And so you have access to the best individual DI products through the WDA and through Dave Dorley. Here's the problem. You never can buy enough individual DI. So we talked about how financial advisors tell you absolutely need as a dentist to insure up to 70% of your income post-tax. So you don't want that benefit getting taxed. So like I have a few examples here of a dentist and an oral surgeon of typical stuff that we do. So typical dentist making 220,000. How much individual DI does the typical dentist usually have? Well, anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000 a month in coverage. And so I guess the question is, when you look at this graph, is if you suffered a career-ending disability, could you survive off of less than 40% of your income? The answer is no. I mean, look at that gap. I mean, we're talking about a gap of $70,000 to $80,000 per year. So individual DI is the gold standard. It's the best, but because of limitations in the marketplace, you can't insure up to 70% of your income through individual DI. You have to use other sources. And so what might doctors consider? Well, additionally, what doctors need to consider actually is, yeah, I need to insure myself, but I'm in a very, very competitive marketplace. So, what can I do for myself, but as well as for my employees? Well, you would love to put in a group program that can actually get up to 60 or 70 or even 50% of your income replaced. You need to use a group program for recruiting and retention purposes. I'll just tell you, dental hygienists, they essentially cannot buy individual DI, and it's because individual carriers don't want that risk. So really thinking about putting in a group LTD program for your dental hygienist will create a real stickiness. So that's something you really have to consider. Additionally, you want a program for your staff that rewards them for returning to work. right? Because if you buy a group LTD product for your staff, you don't want them languishing on claims. So you want to put in a program that doesn't penalize them and try to force them back to work, but really kind of rewards them to get back to work. So we'll talk about some of the features of the MDIS program that does that. And then additionally, something that's totally overlooked by financial professionals is all the overhead involved in running your practice. So like if you own your own practice, you either own the building or you have a lease on that building, and it's super expensive and hard to get out of. So you need to consider business overhead on both the individual side, but MGIS offers, and by the way, MGIS being a group carrier offers a guarantee issue program and a rider for business overhead expense to help you out with that component. So just want to hit a statistic for you about the gap that we see for dentists, because they're so focused on buying individual DI and often go without group LTD because they think group LTD doesn't cover what they do. Here's a statistic from the AMA. 77% of US physicians say disability insurance is essential and nice to have. And 60% of physicians reported knowing a physician who suffered a disability. Despite that, a high percentage are unaware that their specialized insurance needs are largely ignored by traditional benefit policies. So what we're really saying here is this, that you know you need it, but you're unaware that you can't buy enough, and a lot of the products out there are not specialized enough. And so the WDA has put together a very specialized program. Are there other features that are important to dentists? Well, yeah, I mean, basically, because individual DI is so hard to get, wouldn't it be nice if you had guarantee issue insurance? Something that you did not have to answer any medical or financial questions. Mental nervous limitations. If you look at even the individual marketplace, most carriers now don't want to pay mental nervous claims. So like if you go out on depression or anxiety or substance abuse, and if they do pay those claims, it's really limited. And so you'd love to have a plan that wasn't limited. Other things to consider are you're working with, the general public. There are a lot of infectious and contagious diseases that may not disable you, but put you out of commission. Like, God forbid you, had a needle prick and you developed hepatitis C. Could you be viable in your marketplace if you develop that? Like, you'd have to advertise it to your client. So is there something out there that can protect you against that? The answer is yes, through the MGIS program. And I'll talk to you about that in a minute. Additionally, what if you have a progressive illness? Like, let's say you get diagnosed with MS. The day you're diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, you're not disabled that day. It takes a toll, and over years you will try to work through that issue. Well, is there a feature that locks in your income the day that you're diagnosed with MS? And the reasoning behind that is you'll probably be making a higher income versus years later after dealing with MS, and now you're ready to go out on claim. Well, the answer is yes, and the MDIS program has a feature that locks in your income the day you're diagnosed with a progressive illness. We talked about business overhead. The other thing I'd talk about is malpractice insurance. It's very, very expensive, and wouldn't it be nice to have a rider or feature that you could add to your disability program to cover that malpractice insurance? The answer is yes, MDIS has that. Let's talk a little bit more about the individual DI marketplace. I mentioned at the top of the hour that I actually cut my teeth in individual DI before I moved over to employee benefits. And what I found was dentists, when they apply for individual DI, they're either declined or receive some sort of limitation or modification on their plan 50% of the time. So like when you apply for disability insurance on the individual side, just understand you fill out a massive questionnaire asking you all these different types of health questions. The carriers are allowed to look at your medical records back several years. And because of adverse claims history with dentists, if there's anything going on with you, whether you have a bad back, bad neck, you take an antidepressant, you're either going to get declined or you'll receive a modification like an exclusion, like we'll cover you, but not your back and neck. I mean, those are the tough things that you run up against. Additionally, what is the most expensive way to buy disability insurance? It's through IDI. I mean, the cost for individual DI can sometimes be off the charts. Additionally, for your office personnel, we talked about it. Dental hygienists cannot get, or I shouldn't say that. There are some carriers that do offer dental hygienists. It's prohibitively expensive, and the contracts are not very, very good. They're not good at all. So it's really tough for your office personnel to get individual DI, and most opt to not get it. And so the only time they actually do get coverage is through group LTD. And just to reinforce this, this is a quote from the American Dental Association. It's been their experience that many dentists are woefully underinsured. ADA statistics reveal that 20% of dentists either have no disability insurance, which is crazy to think about. It's always better to be overinsured than underinsured. That goes without saying. So yeah, I mean, even 20% of dentists out there don't have anything. So this is where NDIS comes in. So I've talked a lot about our product. So again, we're a group LTD carrier meant to stack on top of the individual DI that you already have. But here's what the advantages are of the NDIS program. So you see this chart up here, but basically on the left-hand side, you see the advantages and disadvantages of an individual DI program. What's great about individual DI is the definition of disability and how claims are adjudicated. Basically, with an individual DI plan, if you go out on claim, it's so specific to what you do that the claims examiner will only look at your procedures. And how they do that is by ordering your CDT codes, because that tells the story. So if you're like a highly specialized dentist doing all different types of procedures, that's going to tell the best story. They don't care about what the typical dentist does. It's all about what you do. So that's why individual DI is the best, because it leads to the best claims outcomes. And then additionally, unlike group carriers, they don't have any weird provisions that force you back into work, like mandatory rehab or mandatory part-time work. It's all about what you do, and it's your choice to work once you're deemed disabled. Here's the problem, and we've talked about it. Underwriting. It's incredibly tough to make it through, and it's very, very expensive. On the right-hand side is what you see in the typical group marketplace, which, quite frankly, dentists are taught that group LTD is not very good. The only advantage to group LTD is that it's guarantee issued. You don't have to prove any, you don't have to prove that you're medically fit. You don't really have like lengthy financial underwriting or anything like that. And then group, typically stacks on top of the individual DI that you purchase. But the problem is with the other carriers out there, the typical group carriers, is the definitions of the contract are not good. Okay, it's much, much harder to qualify. They don't care about what you do. They care about, they essentially treat you like the most typical dentist, and they get to decide what the typical dentist does. So that's why typically dentists have not bought, group LTD. And then the other thing that is, let's pretend for a minute that you had one of these carriers and they did accept your claim. Typical group LTD contracts have provisions to force you back to work. You have this claims examiner breathing down your back saying, hey, you know what, we think that you can, go answer phones at your dental practice, or hey, we think you can, do cavity fillings and teeth cleanings. You might not be able to do root canals and stuff like that, but we're going to ask you to go back to work. So it's really invasive. It's really, a claims examiner trying to tell you what to do. So typical group LTD is not good. But in the middle there is what MDIS does. We take the best parts of an individual contract, that CDT code claims adjudication is all about what you do, not what somebody else does. We don't have any sort of weird provisions like forcing you back to work. We take those key provisions from individual DI, the best of that, and the best of long-term disability, and we put it into one contract. So we actually call our product Disability Guard for Doctors. It's not a typical group LTD plan. It's based off of what you do, and you can stack on top of your individual DI so you can get up to 60 to 70%. Here's just this is a chart showing you the different definitions of disability. So like at the bottom there are like the worst definitions, and so like I typically, when I compete against other group carriers, that's the definition of disability at the bottom. It's anywhere from an ONOC definition to an NEOC definition. NEOC being the worst definition that you could possibly have. Basically, you have to prove you can't do any occupation. And then like maybe one step up where they might cover you as a dentist, but they don't look specifically at what you do. They don't care about what you do. They determine what the typical dentist does. What we do is at the top. just like individual DI, it's CDT code claims adjudication. So if you go out on disability with MGIS, all you have to do is prove that you can't do even just one of your actual procedures that you've been performing over the last 12 months. So like, let's say you can't do a complex root canal surgery or procedure, excuse me, on let's say a geriatric patient. Because like I think about my mother who she's 75 years old, recently was at the dentist's office. She had to get a lot of work done because she's getting older. Her teeth are a challenge. She was in the dental chair for 6 hours getting complex root canal procedures done. Let's say you couldn't do that anymore due to some sort of medical issue. All you have to do with MDI is prove you can't do that one procedure, and you're disabled under our contract, and it's your choice to work. Our contract language is so much stronger than every other group carrier in the marketplace. That's how our contract reads: unable to perform one or more of the actual procedures that you've been performing. It's superior. Like there are other carriers out there that might offer specialty and subspecialty, but again, they don't look at what you do in terms of your procedures, and it's your procedures that you built your practice on. That's why you need individual DI who looks at your procedures, and MGIS, because we're the only group carrier out there that does that type of claims adjudication. This slide, there's a lot going on here, but and I won't go into every detail, but I encourage you to reach out to Christine and Wendy. And the reasoning behind that is when you get a consultation from Christine and Wendy about what they can offer through MGIS and as well as Jake on the individual side, they have a handout that looks like this. And basically what's going on this handout is on the left-hand side, you have individual DI. On the far right-hand side, you have what typical group carriers do. But in the middle is what MGIS does. And what you'll find is if you go contract provision by contract provision, you'll find that the group program through the WDA mirrors more what individual DI does than typical group. And it's all across the board, whether it's the definition of disability, partial disability, mental disorder coverage, you name it. Here are some things that MGIS does not do to really reinforce the fact that there's no ambiguity about how claims are handled. We'll never force you into doing other occupations or duties. We also take into account that like dentists are paid differently than most occupations. We'll never, like if you're out on claim with MGIS, we'll never offset your benefit based off of income that you earned prior to being disabled. That might be kind of tough to understand, but just know that our competitors, if you let's say you have a different carrier, a group LTD plan, and you get disabled, lots of times when you go out on claim, the carriers will say, hey, are you still getting paid on procedures that you performed, let's say a few months ago, because insurance is still trickling in? What they'll do is they'll offset your benefit amount based off of income that is still coming in. Or if you're a partner in a practice and you're disabled, but you're still due, let's say a dividend or a distribution, our competitors will offset that distribution against your benefit amount. We'll never do anything like that, nor would individual DI. So yeah, we have no mandatory provisions. A lot of carriers will say, hey, if you can work 40 hours a week, you're off a claim. We don't do that. It's all based off of the number of hours that you typically work. And if you can't work those typical hours, you're disabled under our contract. So yeah, we don't have any hidden provisions in the MGIS contract that would knock you off a claim. Additionally, we have these added features. I mentioned that business overhead protection is something that's totally overlooked. Well, we have a rider that you can put into your group contract that would cover that. And it's not a reimbursement rider. It's straight money to you. So like, if you're disabled, you need that benefit amount to protect your income. So we'll with the business protection rider, it's an additional benefit that we pay to you so that you can either use it to pay your staff or pay off your lease, whatever expenses you currently have, so that it would keep you afloat. Retirement contribution benefits are often overlooked. What happens at 65 if you've been out on disability for 10, 20 years? Or have you been contributing to your retirement? A lot of people don't. So we have a feature that pays additional monies into either your 401k, your IRA, something like that. And additionally, we talked about the infectious and contagious disease. What happens if you developed you got HIV or you got hepatitis C, God forbid, by practicing on a patient. A lot of carriers wouldn't consider you disabled at that point because you're still able-bodied and can work. Well, we have an infectious and contagious disease benefit that would consider you disabled once you got that diagnosis. Additionally, progressive illness locks in your benefit if you're diagnosed with MS. We have COLA benefits. We've thought of every contingency. So there's these added features that you can get through our program. I want to share, before I finish up, I want to share one example and really the power of working with the WDA and the professional insurance programs and their holistic approach to disability insurance. So they wrote a case that basically on a 40-year-old dentist who was running a really, really successful practice early on in their career, making over $300,000 a year. It was a small practice. It was just one dentist, two dental hygienists, and 2 office staff. And so Jake from Professional Insurance Programs was able to secure $7,500 of IDI early on in the dentist career, but due to health issues, $7,500 was all that dentist can get. And so think about that. If you're making over $300,000 a year, is $7,500 a month going to keep you in your house, going to pay your kids' tuition to college? The answer is no. And so what ends up happening is most organizations could only help you out with the individual DI. They don't have the group to top it off. Professional insurance programs does. And so through the WDA program, we were able to secure more benefit. And what's so important about that is due to the size of this practice, if this client did not go through the WDA and try to go out and get group insurance, most group carriers don't want to write a group this small. Like there's only 5 people. They don't want to write you. They only want to deal with larger organizations. So most carriers would decline to even quote group LTD for you. Additionally, there are some carriers that do play in the under 10 life space, but it's severely limiting on how much you can have. I have one competitor out there that would have probably made an offer for this group, but they would have capped the benefit amount at $5,000 a month. So, I mean, is $5K really going to really make that big a difference? I don't think so. So what this practice was able to do through the WDA is they were able to secure $10,000 of guarantee issue for the dentist, and then a smaller program for the staff. And when you took in the totality of the cost of the $10,000 a month that they got, through MGIS and then the benefit amount through the staff, it was far less than what the dentist was paying in terms of their individual DI, that $7,500. So it was really, really affordable. So again, only through the WDA and professional insurance organization or programs was this doctor able to get that $10,000 a month of group LTD and offer a really competitive benefit for their staff. Other things to think about through our program is if you're a little bit older and you are still in need for disability insurance, the MGIS program, unlike individual DI, covers older claimants. And in fact, if you were to go out on claim and compare our claim schedule versus the other group carriers in the marketplace, we pay anywhere from 6 to 12 months longer because we just know that doctors are working and expecting to work into their 60s and 70s. And so we want to make sure to have a benefit amount and a benefit period that covers you. Again, other contingencies are we would never penalize you for lagged income if you're an owner. So like if you go out on claim, but you're still receiving income earned prior to being disabled, like a distribution or money through accounts receivable, will never offset. And then the last thing I mentioned is if you're foreign born and you want to return back to the country that you were born in, most carriers say, hey, after 12 months, you got to come back to the United States or Canada in order to continue to claim. We don't have any restrictions on that. I do think it's important for us before we close to say that you should consider covering your staff. So the MGIS program does not only cover dentists. We want your staff involved, whether it's a group LTD plan. And the reasoning behind that is if you include your staff, your rate as a dentist goes down. But additionally, you have to think about including your staff. You are competing against some of the largest dental organizations out there. And I promise you, they have competitive employee benefits programs that include short-term disability, group life, and group LTD. So utilize the WDA program to compete against those larger organizations so that you can recruit and retain key individuals. I'll emphasize this again. Dental hygienists have a very, very tough time getting individual DI for themselves. And so if you offer a really competitive group LTD and group STD program, they're going to think twice about leaving your organization to go work for a larger organization or be a travel dental hygienist where they don't have benefits. I do think it's important for us to know that you don't have to flip the bill on everything. It doesn't have to be 100% paid by you. We do offer voluntary life and voluntary disability programs. So if you're not interested in paying for your staff's, maybe you just don't have the budget this year to pay for your staff's benefits, at least offer them a voluntary program, because again, this might be their only opportunity to buy long-term disability or short-term disability. At the top of the program, I talked about how we partner with Reliance Matrix, which is an A+ rated carrier. We do the group life, the group STD, and the group LTD, but Reliance Matrix has other great products like dental and vision. They have worksite. If you're a larger organization who's really concerned about absence and how to manage FMLA, they have a great program for that. So really you have everything covered, through the MVIS WDA program. And again, I'll just mention because of what the WDA does and the special program they set up with MVIS, for certain instances, we'll write down to 3 life groups. Want to emphasize again, who are your contacts over at Professional Insurance Programs? It's Wendy Block and Christina Dolsky. They're both professionals who've been in this industry a long time. They will do a consultation if you're interested in any of their products, as well as they have direct access to me. So if you have any concerns, like if you currently have a group LTD program and you want to compare that against what MGIS and the WDA have to offer, Christine, Wendy, and myself will do what's called a contract audit. So we'll take your group program, we'll compare it against what MGIS does, we'll put it on a side-by-side comparison so you can decide, what's the better program. And that's it. That's my presentation. I'd love to kick it back to you, Marilyn, and see if there's any questions.
Thank you so much for that, Andrew. That was very informative, and I think Chris and I even learned a couple things as that presentation went along, so I hope everyone else did as well. We did have one question that came through here. If I'm maxed out on my individual policy, can I still qualify for this?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that is such a great question. It's the core to what, Wendy and Christine can do for you. So again, being from the individual DI side, like before I came over to MVIS, doctors are severely limited on how much, or doctors and dentists are severely limited on how much they can buy, even if they're totally healthy. So I don't know, if maybe you're maxed out at $10,000 or $15,000 a month, you can absolutely participate in this program, this group LTD program. And what my program, or what we offer, stacks on top of what you currently have. So let's say you have 15,000 of individual DI and you can't buy more. You could easily call Christine or Wendy, pick up $10,000 more of group LTD through the MVIS program, and that would stack on top. So essentially you would have 25,000. Neither carrier, us or the individual carrier, would offset. So you'd truly be able to protect up to 70% of your income.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Hope that answered their question. And then another one, how do I get a quote? What do I have to provide?
Yeah, great question. So first thing you have to do is reach out to Wendy and Christine, as they know exactly, depending upon what product you want, what to provide. But typically what we want is a census, because we want to cover you and your staff. So we want your names, your dates of birth, your occupations, and your income. And basically what's nice is Wendy and Christine have a census, an Excel spreadsheet that they can shoot over to you. So it starts with that. If you have any in-force carriers, send us that information. Send us the billing. Send us your group certificate. And why do we need that? Well, we want to make sure that you're it's priced well. Number one, because hey, if you have a great plan, Wendy and Christine are going to tell you, hey, you've got a great plan, stick with it. So we need to be able to do a real analysis for you. So send over the billing, send over the contract, because I will do a contract audit and I'll point out to you, hey, these are the good features of your contract, but here are like the features you really need to consider, potentially replacing stuff like forcing you back to work before you're, ready to go back to work. I mean, there are some crazy provisions in some of these typical group LTD plans. So get that census completed, send over any booklets for any enforced coverages so we can do a real analysis, and then also the billing statement. So that's where I would start.
Okay, another question. Do I have to cover my part-time employees?
It's a great question. So do you have to? It's an interesting way to phrase it. So let's just start with NGIS can cover part-time employees. So if you want to cover them, it's possible. The answer to the question though is no, you don't have to cover your part-time employees. And in fact, you as the employer set the requirement for who's covered under the plan. Typically, most groups will say you have to work 30 hours a week at the practice in order to be able to to get the coverage. And so I think it's a great way. Like there's a lot of dental assistants, dental hygienists who don't want to work full time, and but they also want benefits. And so if you are having that issue and you want your employees to work longer hours for you, putting in a group STD, group LTD program for them, or a group life program, but saying you got to work 30 hours for me, I'm only going to cover full-time employees. That's a great way to get your employees to work more hours for you. So
Okay, and I believe you said it was the minimum group you could write was 3, correct?
yeah, so with 3 lives, it does depend on the demographics. So I want to be totally upfront about that. So, but yeah, the smallest size groups are 3 lives. Typically, the size group that we would have no issue ever underwriting is 4 or 5 lives.
Okay, and looks like the last one here. How do the premiums compare to individual disability?
Yeah, it's a great question. So like again, I'm really familiar with individual DI because I was in the individual DI sector for 15 years. And so if you were to compare, let's say $10,000 a month of individual DI coverage and compare it against the 10,000 that you could get under the NGIS WDA program, per doctor or per dentist, if you compared it against the individual DI, the NGIS program is about a third of the cost. So it's really a fraction of the cost. And why that's so important is like as you get older in the individual DI marketplace, the premiums really skyrocket. I don't know if a lot of people are aware of this, but if you're a female in the individual DI marketplace, you pay double of what your male counterparts pay. It's just they have female rates; they are much more expensive than male rates. So if you're having any issue funding your individual DI program, understand that the NDIS program you can often get yourself that $10,000 or $15,000 a month of coverage, and you're gonna and you'll cover your staff, and you'll actually pay less than what you do on the individual marketplace. So it's significantly less expensive.
Okay, and are there any waiting periods associated with this policy?
Yeah, so in terms of waiting periods, when I hear that, oftentimes I think of elimination period. So just like your individual DI contract, like if you have a long-term disability individual DI contract, the most common waiting period or elimination period is 90 days. And it's the same thing on this side. So, but what's different though is you can't buy short-term disability usually on the individual side, or it's very hard to get. Very few carriers offer short-term disability. So we do have a very robust short-term disability program that can start 0-day accident, 7-day sickness. So you could start with short-term disability to get you to 90 days, and then the long-term disability would kick in.
Okay, great. Anything else? Feel free to put in more questions. Dave, I know you haven't really been part of this too much, but you've been in the background listening. Is there anything you would like to add for us at all?
No, I think Andrew did a great job. Thank you, Andrew. I think it's an incredible program for a number of reasons. From what I've seen and inquiries that I've received through the years, having this program to top off and enhance and complement the existing individual disability that's in place is just incredible. One of the things that we have challenges with is the getting to 70% income replacement, and also when professionals that we're working with get older, getting through medical underwriting does become a little more challenging. And so to top this off with an incredible program with the definitions of disability that this contract with MGIS contains is just an incredible solution. So to get the full benefit period, to get a policy and coverage with no exclusions or limitations is really, I think, undervalued in some cases. So I think, just in kicking the tires, reaching out to Wendy and Chris to get a quote, I think is just a great idea too. And I think everybody, when I have these conversations, people are very surprised. So it's great job, you guys. So thank you.
Hey, thanks so much, Dave. It doesn't look like we have any other questions that have come in, but if you do have questions, feel free, call Wendy or Chris. They're more than happy to answer all your questions. And I do want to say thank you to Andrew and Dave for being with us today. This presentation, I think, was invaluable to the WDA members, and I hope they take advantage of it. So thank you, everyone, for attending and sharing your Friday morning with us. And like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And thanks again, Andrew and Dave.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks. Bye-bye.